This is Heath Sanders, and you're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE.
Ready for the power of positive and something that will put you back to a time you wanted to last forever? Music is the ultimate time machine. What was your favorite time? Do you want to go back there? LTD Radio features the songs of the 70s, 80s, and 90s that will transport you to a happier time. It'll make you smile and brighten your day. We could all use that about now. TNCRadio.LIVE is proud to carry the great music of LTD Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to a Wednesday night that is hotter than Hades in Southern California. Well, I mean, I've never visited Hades before, but I'm sure it's probably going to feel like this at some point. Josh Banker alongside my co-host, Ivan Anderson, Clutch Time Sports. Ivan, are you melted yet like I am?
You know, I feel sorry for any parts of the country right now, but this is very extreme, and I believe it was yesterday, JB. We got to 83% humidity in Southern California.
You know it's a heat wave in Southern California, and of course we're only complaining because we're spoiled brats here in Southern California. But it's a hot heat wave down here when they're actually talking about a break-off hurricane coming to cool things down over the weekend with some rain. So, that's pretty rare even for Southern California. But we'll take it.
Absolutely. I'll take any coolness. I mean, it's like a stifle. You can't explain it. For those of you that have never been to Southern California, this is very unusual. It's not a humidity like you would do in Florida or in the Midwest or the Northeast. It's a dry, sticky, no movement in the air type thing. Feels like
that's the key word, is that there's like no air. It's like just as calm, and like I'm looking out my office window right here where I'm doing a broadcast from, and there's no movement on the trees. Palm trees up and down the road here, and they're just perfectly still. It's kind of crazy.
It is ridiculous. It's unbelievable. But you know what? I'm not going to complain about it, because at the end of the day, it's still Southern California. You said the right thing. Palm trees. I mean, come December, I'm not going to have anything to complain about come December. So I'm going to stop complaining now.
And that's okay. I mean, we'll endure. I mean, we've got our gas prices below $8 a gallon now, so we're good. We're surviving. But we got some things to be excited about, Ivan. Especially, we wrapped up our 3-week NFL preview last week with predictions and even some fantasy talk. You and I had our fantasy draft on Monday. I put my money where my mouth is, just in case people are listening. I drafted Michael Thomas, who I thought was going to be one of the breakout stars of this year. He was part of the bold predictions that I had, getting 100 receptions and 10 touchdowns this year. So I drafted him. He was my 4th receiver. So don't get too crazy. It's not like I am thoroughly having to rely on him, but I'll be very curious to see how this all plays out. And they've got the Falcons this weekend. So we wanted to run down the games that are coming up this weekend. And the NFL does a great job, Ivan, of really kicking things off well. They've reduced it to one Monday night game first week this year. Last few years, they've had a doubleheader. But the Rams and Bills kick it off tomorrow night at SoFi Stadium here in LA. And boy, if this is not a potential Super Bowl preview, I don't know what is.
It's going to be fantastic. Rams and Bills. Let's be honest right here. If we think back to our predictions of the NFC and AFC, I believe we had a potential of them meeting in the Super Bowl. And I think I'm right on that.
Well, you had the You had the Cardinals and the Bengals.
Yes. Okay, Cardinals and Bengals.
And I had the Bills and Niners. So, what I find amazing.
One of them.
Yeah, what I find amazing is that on opening weekend on the road, the Bills are 1.5-point favorites against the Rams. It's the defending Super Bowl champions. I don't know what that much is different between either of these two teams to make odds makers believe that the Rams are 1.5-point dogs. But we were kind of talking about this off the air before we even started the show tonight about how amazingly accurate these bettors are and these odds makers are at creating these, plus minuses, over under, spreads, all this different stuff. But the Bills are 1.5-point favorites to start.
I just have to look at the quarterback. I just think that team has been together now a little bit. And if you think about where they're wide receivers, you've got a quarterback that's not easily scared. He'll stay in the pocket, but if he decides to go, he's going. He's got legs. He can carry the team. So if you're playing, and whether you're playing in the line, whether you're playing in the linebacker position or you're playing back there in the corners, you got a lot to worry about because you're trying to play this guy, you're trying to play contain, and then you're trying to play this guy from throwing the deep ball, throwing the middle ball. There's just so many weapons with these guys. And let's not look at the Rams and kind of, sneeze on them as well. I think the Rams, they proved their salt last year. They said they were a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl champion. They gambled. They won. And they were, they gambled with house money on that, and they won it. And I expect them to do very well. I don't know if that's going to be a high-scoring game as much as it might be a defensive game.
Well, that's a kind of opposite thinking, I think, of what a lot of people are expecting for tomorrow night, which is probably why the spread is so close and in the favor of Buffalo. It feels like there oftentimes when you've got a Super Bowl champion that are hosting the first game of a season, whether it seems like this happens all the time in the NBA. You get your rings, you have your ceremony, you got all this like celebration thought, and then you're like, oh wait, I got to play a game. And they're having musical guests and all this different stuff. So okay, maybe the pressure is on the Rams. And yes, I think the other reason why the spread is the way it is because Matthew Stafford's elbow is still a little bit in question as well. So, you take a hit from Von Miller, who used to be a Ram and now is on the Bills. Right. And who knows what is going to happen. The Rams, I think, to me, are one of those teams that, yes, they have a terrific defense, but if Matthew Stafford goes down, they're in a whole heap of trouble. I mean, you can say that about a lot of teams, but I think in particular with the Rams being in such a good division at the NFC West that a lot's going to be riding on Matthew Stafford's elbow.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I think that when I look at, I don't know, I can't think of the guy's name. So if you know it, please forgive me. But as you know, the two quarterbacks that were fighting for the second spot for the Rams, I can't think of the gentleman's name. He just looks spectacular in preseason. So I'm not so concerned about the Rams and their quarterback situation. But I just think that the Rams are going to do good, but I just really think this is going to be a defensive game. I mean, I look at what they picked up. Bobby Wagner with the Rams now as linebacker. I just look at what they have in Buffalo, and you mentioned it, having Von Miller go to the Bills. I just see this as a defensive game, and I predict that whoever wins this game is not going to put up more than maybe 21 to 24 points.
Well, the time will tell. It'll be interesting. I mean, I love the build up to this first week, and I think the lack of an extra preseason game this year for a lot of these teams is a good thing because I like the fact that it feels like we are going into a season where we're actually hyping the games. We're not hyping they're not starting with this guy now on this team because he got hurt in the preseason and nobody played and everybody's not sure. It's so nice and refreshing to actually just get geared up and ready to go for a football season.
It is, and you know what, JB? We're in that situation of the changing of the guards again. We're in that situation where we're seeing the new generation coming in and starting to see the exit of the last generation. And I'm really looking forward to this season and the next 3 seasons, because I think these young 22 and 24-year-old guys are really going to start cementing themselves in the NFL, and it's going to be exciting. But one thing you just said, that's so true. The parity is here. You have no idea who's going to win. I think about what we did about our preseason, the AFC and the NFC. And it really was kind of up in the air. We knew what was going to happen out of the NFC West. We knew what was going to come out of the NFC East, and even talked a little bit about maybe that one team, which is the Bengals out of the NFC North. But for the most part, outside of those teams that we really predict, we never predict our Cinderella team. So I'm really interested to see what this season is going to hold.
Yeah, there's always going to be surprises that come out of the blue. That's for sure. I think we're certainly away from the dynasty teams that are going to go 13-3, or in this case, it'd be 14-3 because there's 17 games now. But there's a whole slate of NFL games that we haven't even talked about yet. We've just hit on one now. But when we come back, we'll talk some more of this upcoming week in the NFL. You're listening to Clutch Time Sports right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
I'm Shelley Johnson with Kathy Tuccaro. You can hear us Tuesdays on TNCRadio.LIVE at 8 p.m. Eastern on Women Road Warriors. And don't miss Steve Summers' Overnight Drive right here on TNCRadio.LIVE. Weeknights, midnight to 5 a.m. Eastern. Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
For the latest in Houston traffic, weather, news, and information, don't miss the Evening Surge, weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. on TNCRadio.LIVE.
For the latest in traffic, weather, and information, catch the Morning Grind, weekdays right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Becoming a truck driver is not an easy task. You have to meet several requirements. After reviewing and meeting the requirements, you'll need to obtain a CDL, or a commercial driver's license, through the DMV in your state. To get your CDL, you must pass a knowledge and skills test. Many drivers attend a trucking school to help prepare them for the tests. After successfully passing the CDL test, you now have your Class A CDL. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, there's a little bit more to becoming a professional truck driver than just passing a few exams and getting your CDL. Trucking, as you may know, is not an easy career. It can be stressful, dangerous, lonely, and emotionally draining. Drivers need to make it a priority to become fully prepared for life on the road. Being prepared for life on the road can help avoid unnecessary mistakes and losses. Attending a trucking school is one way for drivers to prepare themselves for their new adventure. However, drivers don't always learn everything they need to be successful during their time at trucking school. Trucking schools will cover the basics for classroom instruction and in-driving modules, but new drivers need to learn more than just the basics. How do new drivers acquire the right training? The Truckers Network is proudly partnering with Advanced Pre-Employment Training, which is a training course for both professional drivers and trucking companies. Advanced Pre-Employment Training helps grow your industry knowledge by providing training courses on all the important topics for becoming a successful driver. These include pre-trip inspection, company representation, communication, document organization, bill of lading, refrigeration units, weight and axles, safety, and industry knowledge. Their focus points are to increase stability and growth in the business, eliminate mistakes and financial losses, maintain company safety ratings, and eliminate drivers and owner-operators quitting or losing their jobs. The Truckers Network members can now save 5% off advanced pre-employment training courses by using our exclusive promo code. Become a member today of the Truckers Network and save instantly on the industry's best products and services. Visit the Truckers Network website at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. That's app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
This is TNCRadio.LIVE.
And this is the story of the biggest blowout in football history. The most lopsided score ever.
All right, guys, sorry about that. Getting us started here.
The rest of the story. And this is the story of the biggest blowout in football history. The most lopsided score ever. It might be sad if it were not so funny. The game took place one October afternoon in 1916. It was a showdown between Tennessee's Cumberland University and Georgia Tech. More specifically, between Cumberland's player-manager George Allen, no relation, by the way, to the recent pro coach, and Georgia Tech's Titan coach, John Heisman. I'll tell you right now what you might already have guessed. The big winner was Georgia Tech. Of course, Coach Heisman continued to distinguish himself in college football. The annual Heisman Trophy is awarded in his name. But what in the world could the future possibly hold for the other guy, the brains behind the biggest bungle in the history of the game? Well, George Allen's encore is the rest of the story. Fired with enthusiasm the day of the game, George delivered a passionate pep talk. Cumberland trotted out onto the field to receive the opening kick. The receiver was nailed where he stood. Downs 1 through 3 went nowhere. Cumberland kicked. Georgia Tech ran it back to the Cumberland 20 on first down, touchdown. And it went on like that. The score was 63-0. 63-0 at the end of the first quarter. 126-0 at the half. Surprisingly, Cumberland players sustained very few injuries. Of course, they spent most of the time running in the same direction as the Georgia Tech players. One Cumberland back who managed to hang on to the ball took off down the field toward his own goal, and with the Georgia Tech defender pursuing him, he crossed his own goal line. He ran through the end zone and jumped a fence on the other side. Anything to get away. After 3 quarters of play, the score was 180-0. Cumberland manager George Allen substituted himself as fullback for a while, produced some negative yardage, and returned to the sidelines. By the final minutes, Cumberland players were looking for places to hide. One of them actually tried to conceal himself under a blanket on the Georgia Tech bench. And when Coach Heisman called over and told him he was on the wrong side, the Cumberland player replied, "Oh, no, I'm not." Dozens of records were set that day. Dozens of records that stand to this day. Just for one example, neither team made one first down. And, of course, for entirely different reasons. And the final score is utterly unparalleled in the annals of football, college or professional, probably even sandlot. Georgia Tech, 222. Cumberland, nothing. 222-0. So, what was left for Cumberland manager George Allen? He was responsible for football's biggest ever failure. He was creator of the most self-destructive game plan ever. Nobody ever blew it as he had blown it. Now, where would he go from here? Where would this abject failure take himself next? Well, he went into politics. He went into politics and became a presidential advisor. And through 3 administrations, Roosevelt's and Truman's and Eisenhower's, and now you know the rest of the story.
222-0, Ivan.
And there was no mercy rule?
That sounds like some of our fantasy football scores from not too long ago.
I was surprised they didn't implement a mercy rule. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I didn't know there was enough time to score that many points in a game.
Well, when you have 222 points and no first downs, well, I guess there's a little resistance, obviously.
It would have been interesting to see what the average downs that they had.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see like what the average touchdown yardage was on all of those scores too.
Yeah, average touchdown, and then average touchdown was, and then what was the average downs that they have? First down, touchdown. First down, touchdown.
Right. Or did it take 3 downs this time? Or did it take 2?
Exactly. Well,
Yeah,
you know what? But you can't say that because I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but back then you didn't have a 4th down. I believe you only had 3 downs.
I'd have to go back and look at that. But regardless, I mean, 222 points. I feel like I'm playing Madden NFL Live or something on my old PS2 or something. Who knows?
Oh, what about Nintendo?
Or some Tecmo Bowl on my Nintendo. Yeah, let's do it.
He's on fire.
Well, that was NBA Jam right there.
Yeah, that was, wasn't it?
That's right. Well, as we go back to the NFL schedule for this week, Ivan, I'm looking at some of these different games. I don't see any 222-0 out there, but there's some intriguing. There are some intriguing matchups. Let's start with your Steelers for one. They named Mitchell Trubisky your starting quarterback this week, but they're on the road against the defending AFC champion Bengals and are 6.5-point dogs to start. I will be very curious to see how well Trubisky does with the spotlight. I think he's got Kenny Pickett breathing on the back of his neck at this point at that quarterback spot, but I'm curious to see how he's going to respond, but also how the Bengals are going to take the bull by the horns to see how they jump out of the gates after getting to the Super Bowl last year.
Well, I can say this, and I will say this. If I'm Cincinnati, I jump, and I'm a Steeler fan, so please, truckers, ladies and gentlemen, I am a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, and I'm saying this. I would not give the Steelers one moment to breathe. If you go and play conservative, and I'd say overt conservative AFC North football, which that division is known for, and you don't go out there and take care and do what you know you can do, they got you to the Super Bowl last year, and let Joe Burrow air it out and get down the field and score and play hard-nosed defense. The Steelers could accidentally win this game with a terrible quarterback like that. I know, I said it. I have never been a fan of his. I always look at the situation that the Chicago Bears got themselves in with him. But I think the Cincinnati Bengals can truly run up the score if they go out there and play wide open football. But if they play this bull crap conservative stuff, and I'm going to, try to run the ball against their decent defense, the Steelers will always maintain a decent defense. Then you can find yourself in a field goal shootout and barely get into the end zone. And I think it'll go bad for them. But I think the Bengals play their style of football. They'll wipe the Steelers off the map. I'm sorry.
Well, and the thing that will hurt Pittsburgh is if they get out to a big lead, they being the Bengals.
Yeah.
You can't Najee Harris is your best weapon offensively, and being in on the backfield, you can't afford to slow the ball and slow the pace down. So if the Steelers get behind, having to rely on Trubisky is a very sketchy prospect at that point.
Can I say this real quick? And I know this is
okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So looking back, who did the Chicago Bears overlook to take Trubisky? Give me the quarterback.
That'd be Mr. Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes. And while he was in Chicago, what was it? Do you remember? I know this is off the cuff. Do you even remember what the Bears' record was with him?
Bad.
It was terrible.
It wasn't horrible. I think people give him not as good of respect as he probably deserves. And I think they probably let him go a little bit quicker than a lot of Bears fans liked. But I think a lot of Bears fans, and when I say a lot of Bears fans, we're talking about one in particular in our fantasy league who screams the orange and blue. But a lot of the problems that were bestowed upon the Bears in those years were by the coaching staff. So, if you have a coaching staff that's, promised to basically work around Justin Fields now and make a game plan and an offense around him, this can kind of just lead us into that game, by the way, against the 49ers this Sunday. Then it'll be interesting to see, because we both know that Justin Fields has way more winning attributes as a quarterback than Mitch Trubisky did. But who knows what Trubisky could have been if he'd given that opportunity like Justin Fields is perhaps going to have this year.
I agree with you a little bit, and yes, the coaching staff did not help him. But let's be realistic. Let's not talk what is. Let's talk what should have been if it was not for a quarterback by the name of Deshaun Watson being suspended for 11 games. We would have, in that AFC North, we would have Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson. Do you really think that Trubisky has any chance if those three, two of the three would be starting, but if those three were starting?
Yeah, it's tough. And by the way, he went 4-8 as a rookie, Trubisky, but 11-3 in his sophomore season, then 8-7, then it's 6-3. So he was 29-21 as a starter with the Bears. So again, certainly not as bad as the pundits may lead you to believe, because the Bears just overall haven't been that great.
I agree with you. But I think he goes from a mediocre conference with Chicago, Detroit, Green Bay, and Minnesota to a much more difficult conference not immediately, but all of a sudden you go to Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and 11 games. That's only 11 games. You still got to face this guy for 7 more games throughout this year. So, I just don't see him being able to get this done. But I'm not really saying anything against him, any ill will towards him. I'm saying this against my own Steelers. We have this unbelievable inability to draft a quarterback.
Do you feel like you're facing more than just the physical road ahead of you? Are you wondering if there's more to life? Join Ron Frazier, the host of Truckers Life Radio, every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, where he discusses the spiritual side of a driver's life. On the show, he goes through the spiritual and moral questions drivers face on a daily basis, helping you, the driver, as you travel life's highway.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. I've got a secret for you. Come a little closer. I have the best antidepressant in the world in my hands. Don't tell anybody. You know what it is? It's hope. The best antidepressant in the world is not a pill. It's a re-injection of hope. In fact, the biggest contributor to depression is hopelessness. When people lose their hope, they sink like a rock in water. They become dysphoric. They lose their desire to do things, because without hope, people feel useless and worthless and impotent. They have no power. An injection of hope, on the contrary, allows people's spirits to ascend. They feel better. What's an example of that? Well, your surgeon's standing over you and she says, "We got it. Don't worry about it. It won't be back. You can go home now and be in peace." And you believe her. Or you get a phone call from your wife who says, "I'm really sorry I left you and the kids. That was a mistake. Please allow me to come back." And you believe her. Or you hear from your nanny who says, "I'm ready to forgive your kids for tying me to the pole in the bathroom." And you believe her. It's hope that brings people back to a sense of feeling better. Sure, sometimes there's a need for therapy, for medication, even for other types of treatments, including ECT or TMS. But never forget that the spirit of hope has more power in overcoming depression than any of these things, at least in my opinion.
Do you have the TNCRadio.LIVE app? It's free and easy to download. Just go to app.tncradio.live, Google Play, or the App Store. Get access to live streaming radio developed by drivers for drivers. Download the TNCRadio.live app today.
Welcome back to Clutch Time Sports. I'm your co-host, Ivan Anderson, along with my co-host, Mr. Josh Banker. Well, everybody knows it's the bottom of the hour, and we know what time it is. What time is it? It's that time. And that's because, JB, in the last 4 years, we done won Trey Rangs.
And Trey Bells for Trey Rangs. I know you all missed it last week. You had the week off for Trey Rangs as we were finishing up our NFL preview. But, Ivan, we're going to take ourselves off of that NFL track here for a little bit for Trey Rangs. So, as you and I have kind of discussed in the past, baseball has done a pretty good job in protecting its fans and its nostalgia and everything. Well, I mean, they have done a really good job literally now protecting the fans with the netting that's basically going from foul line to foul line, it seems like anymore. Although every once in a while, something gets through the nets. So we go to Philadelphia. Why not? For a couple weekends ago, Pittsburgh's rookie phenomenon, O'Neal Cruz, who recently hit the hardest baseball in recorded history at over 122 miles an hour. It was only a single, by the way. Swung and missed at a strike 3. Now, he also couldn't hold on to the bat and sent it upwards towards the stands behind first base. Luckily, the bat clipped the top of the netting to break momentum before it ended up in the lap of Kathy Kohler. No one was hurt, thankfully, including Kohler, who didn't end up with the bat long, though, as Pirates personnel, which is often the case, went to go get the bat to return it to Cruz, because the baseball players like to use their game-used items, even if the bat is at least not broken or something, they'll go back and use it. Anyway, the Pirates gave her a Cruz batting practice bat in return. Not bad at all. But as cool as a game-used one is, the Phillies broadcast team happened to capture the entire moment and the exchanges, and also watching just a few rows over was Mickey Morandini. Does that name sound familiar? Mickey Morandini is a former Philly All-Star second baseman and a current team ambassador who happened to be sitting nearby. So what Morandini did was he got in touch with Phillies personnel and came over to her later in the game with a signed Bryce Harper bat. Jackpot! That is a game that Kathy Kohler will never forget. So she got her rang. She got 2 rangs, really, right there. 2 bats? Pretty good. I'll take that. All right, more baseball for rang number 2. Seattle recently celebrated Ichiro Suzuki weekend as the Mariners inducted him into their Hall of Fame. I tell you, Ivan, I got to see Ichiro in spring training before he ever hit a major league field for the Mariners, and I couldn't believe my eyes. He hit a routine grounder to third that he beat out. Just normal grounder. The guy was taking his time, didn't realize how fast Ichiro was running, got a single out of it. Well, Ichiro was even in uniform shagging fly balls before this Hall of Fame ceremony with newly contracted rookie super stud Julio Rodriguez, who we haven't even talked about his signing yet, but before the game started, the normal ceremonial first pitch honoree was Iris Skinner, who's also known as, quote, Ichiro Girl, from a viral video from years ago when she was just sitting with a friend down the right field line when Ichiro chased a foul ball into the right field seats where she was sitting. Kind of knocked into her, didn't really hurt her or anything, but the collision prompted the ultimate fangirl reaction. So she went viral, and on Saturday she had the ability to throw out the ceremonial first pitch. But what she didn't realize is that she was going to throw it to Ichiro himself.
Right.
The shock provided probably the most sincere jump for joy and scream you could imagine from Skinner. And that video has gone viral too. So hard to believe, but Ichiro's Rookie of the Year and MVP season in 2001, 21 years ago, the last time the Mariners made the playoffs. So let's see if this mojo maybe helps them down the stretch. And it seems like it's working, although they lost today, but that's another story. If the playoffs started today, they would be in. It's the longest major sports drought of any team not making the playoffs, by the way, out of baseball, basketball, football, hockey. Mariners 21 years without a pennant or without a playoff appearance. All right, rank number 3. This is the bronze medal. Maybe not, actually. One more baseball story for you, but this one hits close to home for me, and one I wish that hit closer to my pocketbook as well. So a couple Saturdays ago, a mint condition 1952 Mickey Mantle card was sold by Heritage Auctions for, hold your hands down here, Ivan,
okay,
$12.6 million. Anthony Giordano, a New Jersey waste management entrepreneur, originally had purchased this card for $50,000 back in 1991. That's a pretty nice return on investment right there.
Oh, wow.
The sale beat the $7.25 million total that a T206 Honus Wagner card sold for earlier this month. The card was graded a 9.5 from professional grader SGC company and is said to be the finest known example of a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card.
Wow.
Makes me want to go digging through my box of cards that I've got in my closet at home to see what kind of treasures I find, but I'm afraid I may just find a Milwaukee Brewer Billy Joe Robideau Topps rookie card or something from 1987. But that there is your Trey Ranks.
That's a heck of an investment and a heck of a return on that investment. What I find remarkable about something like that is obviously baseball cards are so subjective as far as pricing and stuff is concerned. But you bought the card in 1991, which is 31 years ago now. Right.
Who knows how his family's evolved and what has happened, kids running around, pets, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you probably got to put something like that on lock and key, in a vault somewhere and make sure that it is getting no sunlight, it's not getting bent, it's not getting moved or whatever. But wow, that investment, $12 million out of $50,000 investment, that's ridiculous.
Well, he showed you that he was a serious collector, just spending $50K. I mean, let's not talk about the $12 million. How many of us have $50K lying around to buy a baseball card?
Yep.
So that thing was in mint condition from the start, and I'm sure he had some advisors in that industry and showing him how to preserve that card. I'm sure it was sealed. I'm sure he probably put it in a better sealed container. And you're probably right. I know he stuck it somewhere where it was dark and no sunlight could get to it, because we know over time things fade. And to go from $50K to $12 million, shoot, I'd have been happy with $1 million.
I think half of my baseball cards still have the gum stuck to the back of them if I actually go look them up right now.
I was going to ask you, do you still have the stick of gum in it?
I don't think I have any unopened packs anymore, but obviously as kids, you don't really understand the delicacy with which you need. I mean, I used to have those binders, and if I had like 5 Kevin Mitchell cards, I'd put all 5 of them in the same sleeve. I'd just cram them in there. Wouldn't care about how, bent the corners got or anything like that. Peeled back, it didn't matter. That's just where all my Kevin Mitchell cards went, But man, but if I had known better then, who knows what kind of, Barry Bonds rookie card. You and I grew up in the 80s.
Oh man, come on, man!
And that's kind of when the card craze really took off.
It was. I actually still have a Sweetness Walter Payton card.
Okay.
I have a Herschel Walker card and a Bo Jackson card.
Well, and what's funny is that even those cards are more valuable than the baseball cards of those times, because football cards were very rare back in, even through maybe I think the mid 90s really is kind of when that craze kind of kicked up for football after, it felt like all the baseball cards, got really crazy in the mid 80s, but the other sports, basketball especially, finally started kicking back up in popularity once the Dream Team came around.
True.
And when the Dream Team came around, all the different players that were on that team were their own individual cards started going like hotcakes. And especially, you got Michael Jordan as part of that team, Magic, Larry Bird, all that stuff. Yeah. The baseball cards are always going to be top of the heap, but those other sports started catching up. It's kind of, I haven't seen a baseball card or basketball, whatever, in so many years. So I'd be curious just to see how the technology of that stuff even looks now.
It's definitely a little bit different, and you're right. I haven't seen it in a long time, but we're gonna talk and pick this back up in a few minutes here in our final segment. You listen to Clutch Time Sports on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Join Tom Kelly and the rest of the team each day on the Morning Grind. Then stay tuned for an encore presentation of last night's Landline Now. Weekdays on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Mental health is a topic that isn't addressed enough in the trucking industry. There are many articles, websites, and businesses that can help truck drivers live a healthy lifestyle. But what about mental health? Mental health issues are not uncommon in truck drivers. In fact, trucking poses several risk factors when it comes to mental health issues. Lack of sleep, loneliness, stressful work environment, lack of physical activity. Truck driving can be rewarding, but health issues such as sleep apnea, obesity, diabetes, and depression can result from the strains of the job. So how do drivers prevent these health issues? Stress is an unavoidable part of trucking. Trucking allows you to see beautiful parts of the country, but it also puts you in many stressful situations. Driving in traffic in unfamiliar cities creates stress on a driver. There's stress when you're not sure if you're going to be able to deliver your load on time. You also can become stressed when you're away from home for so long. As you can tell, there are plenty of stress triggers when you drive professionally for a living. One of the best ways to reduce stress is by learning how to handle it. I realize it's easier said than done. It takes time and self-discipline. Here are some examples of ways you can reduce stress as a truck driver. Listen to music or a podcast. Start eating healthy. Exercise or stretch. Talk with family and friends. Get good sleep. Plan your trip out. In addition to managing stress, there are other ways you can keep good mental health while on the road. Drivers often portray the image of being tough. Mental health is not a discussion that many truckers are going to have. Communicating your mental health struggles with friends and family, therapists, or other drivers is a good way to work through your mental health struggles. Here's some more ways you can stay mentally healthy when you're on the road. Stay in touch with loved ones. Establish a morning and night routine. Bring a pet on the road. Travel with your spouse. Consider team driving. Bring things on the road to keep you entertained, like a laptop, video games, or TV. Occasionally book a hotel room. It's nice to get out of your truck every once in a while. Mental health is just as important as physical health. Drivers need to prioritize their mental health and take the necessary steps needed to be mentally healthy. It all starts with communicating with someone you trust, managing stress, and taking time out of the day to do something nice for yourself. For more information on mental health in truck drivers, check out Common Mental Health Issues Truck Drivers Face on thetruckersnetwork.net. Thanks for listening. Kathy DeCaro is nothing short of amazing. She not only drives the world's biggest truck as a heavy equipment operator in northern Alberta, Canada. She's an international motivational speaker and the author of Dream Big, an autobiography about overcoming a lifetime of trauma and abuse that led to dreams of success. Kathy inspires people the world over to change their lives and improve their self-worth. Her book will change your life. She's passionate about personal growth and believes anyone can change their circumstances and overcome their obstacles if they believe in themselves. Her life will amaze you and seriously inspire you. Be sure to order a copy of her book, Dream Big, on Amazon.com.
Welcome back, Clutch Time Sports. Josh Banker alongside Ivan Anderson. By the way, check us out, Twitter and Instagram at Clutch Time TNC. Ivan, you wanted to we had a couple more stories or comments there about the baseball card stuff we ended up with after the last segment.
You know what? Actually, we were talking off air, our producer Tom, you and myself, and one of the things that kind of sparked a question in me, because we were talking about you having a Pete Rose card, and dealing with the scandal that he dealt with about betting and all that good stuff. But it made me kind of flash over to football. And as you know, I'm a big college football nut, and yes, I was watching college football this past Saturday a little bit, not as much as I did the week before. But what's really interesting is, now that the NIL, let me ask you this. Let me pose this to you, JB. So it's a college football question, but it's kind of political. Now that the NIL is here for college sports, do you think Reggie Bush should have his Heisman Trophy returned to him?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, it's so hard to go back and change things retroactively. Even if you flip it back over to baseball, it's like, okay, is Pete Rose a Hall of Famer? For what he did on the field? Of course he is. What he did off the field? Of course he's not. You talk about Barry Bonds. I mean, dope or not dope, is he a Hall of Famer for what he did on the field? Probably, even without the dope. I mean, he probably is a Hall of Famer. I heard an interview asking Bob Costas who the home run king is, and of course he said Hank Aaron. He didn't say Barry Bonds, but I mean, technically, all those guys in the steroid era didn't do anything "quote unquote" illegal, according to the collective bargaining agreement with baseball. So you either let all of them in or you don't let any of them in. And so far, they haven't let really any of them in. So it's interesting. Like with Reggie Bush, though, I just don't know that answer, honestly. I mean, you would think that there are hundreds of stories like Reggie Bush that just had never gotten out. It just so happened that USC is such a big profile school, and Bush was a Heisman Trophy, guy, that he just got too popular, I guess, so to speak, to where stories start coming out, and you just. I don't know. It's really hard.
You mentioned all of those great players, and this is the one thing that I would say, and the reason why I probably will side with them getting into the Hall of Fame and getting their Heisman Trophy back. The teams knew they were juicing. I mean, they wrote a baseball book called Juice Ball. They knew it. And so I have a hard time implementing rules on someone else when you know it. If you committed a crime, if I commit a crime and you know of it, you judge fairly. It's called, you assisted in the crime because
you're an accessory. Yeah,
you're just as guilty
as they are.
Yes, and that's the thing that really bothers me. We ran around here for decades, and we pretend that this was amateur sports when we knew the boosters were taking care of these kids, of course, the high-end kids. So. What's the difference of NIL legally coming out doing what they were already doing when it was so-called illegal? And
I agree.
The same question I posed to, juice ball era. All the league was losing money. All they cared about was putting butts in the seats. That's all they cared about, and they got it. I mean, baseball. If you look at its ratings. During the 90s, they had some of the highest ratings they've ever had in league history. I mean, everybody was paying attention to Mark McGwire. Everyone was paying attention to Sammy Sosa. Everybody was paying attention to Reggie Bonds. Barry Bonds. Everyone was paying attention. And then those that came out later and said they were taking it. Giambi came out later and said he was taking it. I mean, think about all the players that came out later and said they were doing it. So my thing is, if you know the situation and you're allowing it to happen, and then you're going to go back and penalize these kids and penalize these professionals, then I would say to each one of those owners that knew about it, each one of those GMs that knew about it, they too should not be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
It's hard to argue, that's for sure. I don't think there's any fine line, perhaps, that you could draw, any conclusions on this sort of deal. But you're right. I mean, ultimately, the Reggie Bush stories and all that kind of stuff led to what we have now.
Right.
And giving the athletes their quote unquote fair share, because let's be honest, yeah, these schools are part of this big TV contract or whatever, these different conferences have different networks and all this different stuff. But without any of those players, they got nothing.
Exactly. And let's be honest. What Menzel did was put it on steroids. I mean, if you ask me what Bush did, he just took money from the boosters. Menzel actually went out there and sold himself and made money.
Yeah, and like our producer Tom is saying right now, who in the press knew what and when, and all that. It's so tough. I mean, I can't. You get somebody that is a big time recruit that goes to a big name school who has nothing, and that they're not going there for anything else but going to the NFL or going to the NBA. Or something to that. They're there for their minimum amount of time and then they're gone. Of course, it's just a stepping stone to getting money. I mean, are they really there for an education? You would hope so, but 9 times out of 10, that's just very much not the case. And let's be honest. We talked about this before. Less than 1% of these collegiate athletes that are there ever make it to a professional league in the first place. So
exactly.
It's just a tough line to try to establish. It's hard.
It is, and I'll give you one more and we can switch the subject. Tiger Woods. I mean, people treated him as though he committed some type of mass murder when he had an issue with him and his wife. I mean, to me, that's a private situation.
Sure.
And even though we try to make it up and sell it as though, well, he betrayed us, the public. We were all in sports at that time, JB, you and I both. We knew what Tiger Woods was doing. There was no secret among the press. You just didn't cover it. You just didn't say anything. So I got a little upset when the press turned on him and said, oh my gosh, look what Tiger Woods did. And it's like, yeah, well, how many of you already knew that? Because I sure did. And
there are more outlets for that to happen too. When he first started as a professional golfer, there wasn't the Twitters and Facebooks and everything else and all these different outlets to get any kind of suspect issues out in the open and doing all this. I mean, now it's about who's out there first and who's got the story. It's not necessarily about what the story is. Let's just get it out. Let's go.
Right. Well, guys, we've got about a minute left, and I just wanted to tell our audience that I've had a great week, and a lot of you don't know, but I lost my father on Friday, and I just wanted to say just a little bit about him. And he was a great man, and he raised 5 wonderful kids, and he did a phenomenal job. And I was very close to him, and I got the chance to talk to him all the time on the phone, even though I'm in Southern California. He's over in Michigan. I love him. I'm going to miss him. And JB, I can't thank you anymore for being that brother from another mother in the way you have supported me and my family.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure.
Well, JB, we got an exciting weekend for baseball and for football. We have 26 games left in the MLB, and we start tomorrow night.
Well, we'll see you all next week. Ivan, take care in Michigan. Love the Anderson family. Peace out, everybody. Clutch Time Sports here on TNCRadio.live. .live. 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 .live.